Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our panel today on competition rules and industrial transformation. The prime objective of EU and national competition enforcers is to ensure a level playing field for companies to compete fairly. But their power over the markets also makes them a target for NGOs, businesses, and governments who often feel that they stand in the way of a number of objectives core to Europe's industrial transformation. With its state aid powers, the European Commission could play an important role in the Green Deal by allowing national subsidies for green investments or prohibiting dirty subsidies. But NGOs argue that the Commission is not sufficiently using that leverage. Industry is complaining that competition law often stands in the way of cooperation between companies to the benefit of the Green Deal. And national governments, including France and Germany, have repeatedly voiced concerns that competition policy is limiting the EU's development because it prevents European companies to grow into champions that can compete globally. We will explore these topics with our panelists today. We have Kim Jørgensen, Head of Cabinet of Executive Vice President Margareta Vestager of the European Commission, Margarida Matos Rosa, who is the President of the Portuguese Competition Authority, Marco Mensink is the Director General of the European Chemical Industry Council, CEFIC, and Julian Nowak is Associate Professor in EU Competition Law at Lund University and Lecturer in Competition Law at Oxford. My name is Simon van Dorp, and you're watching Politico's live Competitive Europe Summit. Before we begin, a quick reminder to submit questions via the Swapcard app in the question box next to the live stream, and to join the discussion by answering our poll presented by CEFIC. You can also tweet about this event with our hashtag #PoliticoCompetition. So I would like to kick off the panel with a question for Kim. Kim, could you expand on how it has been so far to integrate these Green Deal objectives into the world of competition law?
Thank you very much, and also thanks for inviting me to participate in this panel. I think actually it's an excellent moment to discuss the role of competition policy in the wider context. And also, I think we have seen during COVID also the built-in flexibility that we have in competition policy today. A lot have already been done to also within the field of helping to green the economy, and EVP Vestager and DG Competition. We are certainly very much behind that, and we are also looking right now at our competition rules to even further help with the greening of the economy. We are currently revising the energy and environmental protection state aid guidelines, the EAC, and where we are now looking at how we can broaden the scope of the guideline to enable support in new areas and to all technologies. We are also looking at how we can increase the flexibility and streamlining the existing rules. And we will look at how we can introduce safeguards to ensure that the aid is effectively directed where it's needed. We have public consultations running until, I think, the beginning of August. And we will have a big multilateral meeting with a number of with member states in mid-July, and where we have the aim to adopt revised guidelines by the end of this year. So actually, even before we launched this revision, we have been doing quite a lot in the green field. I recognize that there might always be member states or companies or NGOs who says we can do everything, but at the same time we also need have rules, because we are also seeing areas where companies and member states basically also are trying to sort of greenwash everything, and there, I mean, we also have to be a bit precise on what we can do and what we cannot do. But as I said, we are very much behind helping also to use competition tools to help with the green transition.
Could you give an example of what you mean by this greenwashing?
I mean, we have it already now when we are adopting the recovery resilience plans, where, you know, all member states have to set a target of 37% for green. But also here we have what you call green tagging. We also have it on the digital field. We need to make sure that we are talking about real green things, and it's not just, for example, building roads where you just then paint them green and instead of having them to be black. So I think this is a quite important part of the process.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Margarida, how do you experience this interaction between green objectives and competition enforcement? I think, Margarida, if you could unmute or...
Thank you.
Yep.
So I think it's really important to try to demystify views that put competition policy at odds with sustainability. In many respects, this is really quite the opposite. So in my view, competition and innovation go hand in hand, and that's also true for green innovation, of course, and competition. And that is really because firms, when they operate in a competitive and contestable market, they want first to optimize costs, and that means seeking to reduce or reuse waste and seeking to use renewable or more durable inputs, and that's sustainable in itself. And second, because green products are really in high demand, and so firms wish to capture such consumers that value green products. In other words, consumer demand and their willingness to pay is really an extremely powerful driver of change. And so this is really what the strongest contribution that competition enforcers can bring to the Green Deal. It's to support competitive conditions in the market. And this also, by the way, can help maximize results in other areas that tackle sustainable objectives as well. You know, the usual ones, you know, stemming from green state aid or regulatory standards or bans even. So in my view, and that we should make no mistake really, is that curtailing competition is not the solution to achieve green objectives. This will only set us off target regarding the Green Deal and inflate possibly underlying costs. So I will argue that competition is really a part of the solution, not the problem.
Do you have perhaps an example of this tension at the competition authority in Portugal?
Well, we know we had horizontal agreements that we had to look at. But first of all, I think we shouldn't, as enforcers, write blank checks to the industry. It's not what society expects from us. And we know, the industry knows, that when discussing certain well-framed matters, firms, when sitting at the same table, may end up going too far. And that's happened in the past with detergents. You start discussing ways to reduce plastic and packaging, and you end up fixing prices and trying to maintain your own market share. So this type of behavior, we really believe, distorts the market, hurts consumer, and in other ways also helps or also contributes to harm sustainable goals. I can give an example maybe of how we dealt with at the Portuguese Competition Authority with a form of cooperation that arose during the pandemic. It's not necessarily green, but this was about an initiative in the banking and financial sector regarding regarding conditions set for the moratoria in banking. And so we issued, regarding this request, we issued written guidance to the Portuguese Banking Association and the Consumer Credit Association, two of them, about the main conditions for loan payment suspensions, or the moratoria, as I said. And this was to be applied by members of the associations. But in doing so, we were careful to stress the risks of exchanging confidential information, and that members should remain free, despite the agreement, to grant their clients more favorable condition in these moratoria.
Thanks. Marco, indeed, there's a lot of talk about green cooperation agreements and how they're sometimes obstructed by competition authorities. Could you expand on that?
Absolutely, and thank you for the opportunity today. First of all, then, and I need to come from the other side. We are very tough on competition rules in CEFIC that we comply, but also I would say almost all, and probably all of our members want to compete. That's the way they move forward. That's the way they innovate, and especially don't like hurdles in the market that shouldn't be there, which includes competitors not complying with the rules. So there's a strong focus on competition, compliance with competition law, and looking for the way forward. Where we are struggling is that you see the chemical industry has what we call a double twin transition to go. We need to be low carbon by 2050, net zero. We need to digitalize, which is a strong task as well, get completely circular and non-toxic all at the same time. And that is within 1 or 1.5 investment cycles. Now, where we're looking for support, I think that's the right word in our dialogues with DG Competition, is because sometimes when you ask, can I do this? The answer is no, is the question, how can we do things? And I'll give you a few examples. We're building a transition monitor as industry federation to see how far the progress is on the decarbonization pathways. Challenges we have is that we cannot forecast any market data because trade federations always look at the past in statistics, but can never look forward. And actually the project is guided with external counsel to make sure that we comply with all the rules. But that's a challenge if you want to map your pathway towards 2050. The same is that when we develop the electric cracker in the industry with pretty much one technology supplier, but now 3 consortia developing the same, you'll see that the race will likely develop the best technology, but we don't have too much time until 2030. So we're looking for guidance on how information can be exchanged. And the third example would be if you look at the chemical strategy for sustainability, a lot of regulatory measures coming in, a number of substances that will be regulated more than before. How can you cooperate with the value chain without market behavior that's not allowed? And some of the examples were now mentioned, but you can imagine as well is that if some substances have to be removed from the market, companies cannot agree together because downstream users will not appreciate. But we need to increase the speed of transformation as well. And a number of the answers are in innovation. We're not looking at support or subsidies as an answer, but how do you frame an innovation framework which goes closer to the market is things we're struggling with today.
Thank you. Julian, I don't know, what is your view on how these cooperation agreements interact with the Green Deal?
Well, I think the Commission, as you've already heard, they have a bit of and also my colleagues at competition authorities, they have a bit of a tightrope to navigate here. So on the one hand, you have constitutional requirements, political requirements, questions to fostering sustainability. And on the other hand, you have companies who want to or claim to want to foster sustainability, green, or whatever. At the same time, I think we all should, and the competition authorities in particular, take a step back and say, well, do we really trust companies to act in the interest of the society at large? Is it not that companies are primarily here to make money? So that's the kind of tension that they have, and certainly competition authorities do not want to prevent companies from doing something green, but at the same time, they need to be suspicious. So I think this is the kind of challenge that competition authorities have, and they need to find ways. And I think what we have seen, for example, in the Dutch competition authority, they have offered pathways to talk to them and have ensured that if companies comply and follow with what they have been told in conversations with the competition authority or their guidelines, that if afterwards problems arise, they're not going to face hefty fines. And we all know, and I think people at Politico like to report those very hefty figures that sometimes competition authorities fines that competition authorities impose on companies. So I think that's the kind of tension that competition authorities have on the one hand, and then I suppose the other one is, especially the European Commission, they also need to, and we have heard that at the beginning, double check what member states are doing. So we might also not trust member states that much that they actually do what they want to do.
Kim, the European Commission is currently reviewing its guidelines on cooperation between competitors. What will be the main drivers of that reform, and could you expand a bit, perhaps also in the context of some of the topics that were discussed?
Maybe before that, if I just could say two words to Marco. I mean, I certainly understand and noted very carefully also what you say, and sometimes, I mean, we are really also, it's also in DG Competition's interest to have this dialogue with you and companies, but I think we also need a bit more sort of detailed information and more precise information. So I think it would be extremely good to follow that line. And sorry, back to your question. I mean, I think we are review right now our guidelines on sustainable, and I think that's also a very important part of all the reviews we are doing now. If that was the question, the review of the horizontal block exemption regulation is an opportunity also for us to look afresh at the issue and to steer the debate, sort of to ensure that relevant sustainability claims are taken into account. And I think in revising our rules, we will seek to strike the balance between sort of providing comfort to companies engaging in genuine sustainability cooperation agreements while maintaining strong enforcement and preventing, again, as I said before, greenwashing to the detriment of consumers. I think the latter is quite important because effective competition is the strongest incentive for green investments. I think this is, again, an important point, but that was also stressed by Margareta. Thanks.
Thanks. I see we have a question from the audience from Dan Stevenson. To what extent can policymakers bend competition rules to accommodate the objectives of the economic recovery? I don't know if any of the panelists want to tackle this one.
Maybe I could start at least just to say that I actually think that we during the pandemic has done quite a bit to bend the rules. I think we have taken more than 500 decisions under the temporary framework, and has been provided more than 3 trillion of euros in state aids, helping a lot of companies all over Europe, from SMEs to very, very, very big companies, and we are this autumn going to make the 5th amendment of this temporary framework. I think we will have a bit more difficult discussion, to be frank, this autumn, in the sense that we can now see that some member states are actually rebounding economically very quick, where other member states are still in sort of severe economic problems. But we will have a prolongation of the temporary framework, but it will be a sort of an amended framework that will hopefully also begin to point back to a normal or a new normal.
Thanks, Kim. Does anyone want to react? Margarita?
Yes.
Or Marco, go ahead.
I'll just. I think the question is wrong on the word bend, and Kim didn't react on it. But I think the question should be, to what extent can we use the competition rules or expand the rules or define new rules which allow the recovery? And the same applies with the Green Deal. So we're not looking for the word bend. We're looking to explain, cooperate, dialogue, how we can use the rules to get this done. And what was said before, with some concern indeed that the difference recovery also in the different member states and the support levels actually will also distort the competition towards the other countries. In that sense, we're also a European federation with different positions in different countries. But the real question is how can we forward the bigger picture, be it the Green Deal or the recovery, on this tightrope that we just mentioned. That's where we're looking for the guidance, and I'll be happy to follow up with Kim. But let's not call it bending. Let's call it applying or refining, which I think is a better way of looking at it.
Margarita.
I actually.
Yeah. If I may, I think first of all, there's always a room to improve communication in a more effective way regarding the guidance that is available to firms, so that they don't shy away from doing things that they are not really sure. There are do's and don'ts, or if you prefer, orange and red lines that can be found in regulations and guidelines. And I think we should strive to be effective in communicating that leeway before we start changing regulation. But then regarding the recovery in particular, we at the Portuguese Competition Authority thought about how to guide all the spending and the attention of policymakers during this recovery. And we issued a roadmap just 2 weeks ago regarding how to enhance recovery through applying state support based on competitive neutrality, just to mention a few points. Avoiding restrictive requirements in public procurement, and unleashing firms and individuals' potential by removing unnecessary barriers that we still find in legislation, to make it simple and short. But we have, of course, a full roadmap that can help the recovery and the stakeholders involved in the recovery. But this is just to sum up.
Julian, did you still want to share your perspective?
Yes. I was thinking, actually, bending might not necessarily be a bad thing to say. I think as lawyers, that's what we possibly do, or how you could describe what we do. We try to interpret, redefine, see how much room there is. But in essence, we need to make sure that we do not bend the rules too much so that they break. Where would they break? And those are kind of considerations that the European Commission or the national competition authorities have. They need to still be able to apply them. And if you have something that is completely mushy, that is not very clear, then you get into troubles. And I think in particular, if you think about state aid, another way how you can break the rules if you're too flexible is if you're too lenient. Think about the fact that the state aid rules, they're there to offer a level playing field to companies. So if you bend them now a lot, then you might break this idea that member states should not kind of dope their companies. Why do we have these rules? So that the member states with a lot of financial power, let's be frank, the Germans, the French, maybe some of the Dutch, the Nordic countries, those with the deep pockets, that they are not going to dope their companies at the expense of smaller member states. So I think that's where we need to be careful not to break the rules, but we can interpret and maybe bend the rules.
Thanks, Julian. Kim, I wanted to turn to a third topic, which goes back to February last year and also before, ever since the Siemens-Alstom merger. France and Germany, together with Italy and Poland, sent a letter to your boss, European Commission Vice President Margrethe Vestager, with a list of demands, or should I say wishes, to change competition rules to allow for the creation of European champions. I was wondering, how do you assess whatever was written in that letter, what happened since, and do you have anything in the pipeline that you think could meet the concerns of these countries?
Thank you very much. I think that was not the only letter that we received, by the way. I think we received a letter by quite a substantial, larger number of member states who didn't share the view in that letter. And I think it's very important, also going back to Siemens Alstom, that merger could have happened if the two companies would have been interested in making sure that the transaction would not have harmed the consumers, and all companies that are wanting to do a merger, they know that they will also have to do remedies, and in the end, the two companies decided not to merge and not to make the remedies that was necessary. We know that Alstom's and Bombardier, they merged, and here there were no problems. So I don't think it's fair to say that EU or DG Competition stands in the way of companies, even large one or even very large one, that decides to merge, as long as those transactions do not harm European consumers, both businesses and consumers. And the EU merger regime allows European company ample scope to grow and to develop. I think there's it's very few cases actually every year where we have competition concerns. So I don't think we see it in this way. And I think if you look at reports, we also had a recent debate also with the IMF and with the new US administration that is interesting enough beginning to use the word competition instead of antitrust. And I think they are also saying that we need competition rules to ensure growth, and you can even go back, if you want to go really back, to the Great Depression in the States, where studies have shown that if you relax the competition rules as a short-term solution to support companies in distress, then you might most likely delay recovery and create market conditions that harm the market instead of doing the other way around.
One of the specific demands, I believe, in that letter was for increased collegiality of Commissioner Vestager with other commissioners. Do you see a sign that there are more discussions, for example, about mergers between commissioners? And do you think that is a trend, or
I mean, we discuss competition policy basically on a daily basis. Both Margrethe Vestager is doing this with other colleagues, and we are doing it with other DGs. So and as you know, all decisions in the Commission are collegial. So I simply don't really buy this one. And as I said, we have, during the COVID crisis, I think we have, as I said, been working day and night to make sure that we could be of help also with the temporary aid framework. And I think, again, competition policy is basically a kick. It's a key for quick recovery. It's not the other way around. I think competition policy is also key for strengthening EU's resilience. I think this is a very important point. But as I said, at the same time, we are, of course, also, as I said, on the green, in the green transition, we are also looking at our policies and how we can help with the green transitions.
Thank you. Marco, I don't know if you have any views on this from the sector. Do you believe that competition policy stands in the way of consolidation that should be possible?
In our case, I can say no. We have a number of global champions in the chemical industry, and Europe is still one of the strongest chemical industries in the world. I think we need to watch out. I have a Chinese colleague who has a clear plan. He has a strategy called make, buy, or take over, where where the Chinese strategic plan either says you make the chemicals, you buy them, or you buy the companies that make them. So I think we need to be vigilant, but most of our companies are globally operating, and I don't think that's in the way this case. What we are looking for is on one specific area. There's the active pharmaceutical ingredients, where I think with Commissioner Kyriakides, the discussions are ongoing for the reshoring or repatriation of some of those value chains. And then it has to be done very careful, because also that can distort the competition here. But the question is, how much are we in balance with our dependence of India and China? Something we're currently actively looking into. But also there, the bigger companies in our membership on chemicals and pharma are global champions already. So the Siemens Alstom case, not so much a concern for us. Where I think we focus, and I'm in dialogue with the colleagues in Kim's cabinet, is if you look towards the Green Deal and we have an investment and a half to go until 2050, can we not bend the rules, but can we clarify rules, expand the rules, so that cooperation on new technologies, cooperation on getting more renewables to market, on forecasting markets for climate impact, on indeed substitution of chemistries, that there we can find the boundaries of what is possible, so we actually make it on time. I think that's our core concern.
Great, thanks. Margarita, I would still like to ask your view on this question, bending the rules, breaking the rules. I hear Marco saying clarifying them. Do you think there is an issue that the rules are not clear enough? And how could you, as a competition authority, potentially remedy that?
Well, thank you. But I think I mentioned that there's clearly leeway to expand on an effective communication, so that we don't have to change the rules. But and so if we strive as enforcers to communicate better, all the better. I think we should not forget, though, that in this discussion that we were just having on European champions, if I can call them like that, there's also something that was added last year with the pandemic, and that was a discussion on strategic autonomy. That was discussed earlier today in one of your panels. But really, we should not forget that true champions arise from competitive environments, and so I would argue again for not relaxing competition and competition rules, but we should also keep in mind, if I may enlarge the discussion here today, that champions also arrive from a number of factors, and that includes stable macroeconomic environments, competitive and stable fiscal policies, but also access to high quality and competitive infrastructures, utilities, and educated workforce, and then when they operate also in an effective judicial system. So a lot to work on in Europe, I would argue, to have our EU champions arise without the need to distort competition rules.
Kim, would you like a last word?
No, I completely agree with what Margarita. I think I made my point already, so I think it's fine.
Okay, thank you. Julian, do you want to take it home?
Well, I think talking to each other, that's an important part. Communication, and I think we can pick up here two strands. One, communication between industry and competition authority. There, you might say clarifying the rules is important. Explaining the rules, explaining the limits of the rules, of what is possible. But I think, and maybe that's one other side of that request in that letter, is the cooperation within the Commission, within competition authorities and other parts of the government. So I think sometimes we hear, particularly with regard to the green points, that competition authorities do not have the necessary expertise. And there, I think other parts of the government or other parts of the Commission do have that expertise. And I think working groups, not necessarily at the level of commissioners, but working groups at the technical level might be really helpful. So
Great.
sharing of information and talking to each other is important.
Very nice, thank you. So as a concluder, I would still like to give the results of the poll. The question was, what key element of EU competition law could accelerate industrial green transition in Europe? And we have a majority of voters saying there that state aid rules on important projects of common European interest would be the way to go. I would like to thank the panelists for a very interesting debate. And my colleague Giorgio Reali will be bringing a compelling discussion on the subject of SMEs and their expansion in the post-pandemic recovery in a couple of minutes. Thank you all. Stay tuned.